guys, how you doing? Welcome back to another highly exciting, quirky little deep dive. Hope you're doing well and living your best lives. So what are we focusing on today? We are focusing on Slop, AI Slop, because I read an article in The Guardian and I think it's been tracking through a lot of different media at the moment, but it's about AI and the consumption of AI slop that is produced as short form video content and that we are watching on YouTube predominantly, but they also make their way onto TikTok and Instagram as Reels. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And we're going to think about all the ramifications of that. So what exactly does it mean to watch AI slop? What are the wider impacts of this? And why do we need to be concerned about it? So as always, we'll have some facts, some stats, some little anecdotes that explain this and what exactly the problems are. And there's a little solution at the end because I like to come up with the problems, but also the solutions as well. So if this is something you're interested in, stay tuned and we'll get into it into more detail. So for a really long time, I've been on the internet. I know, who'd have thought it? I don't look old enough. But I have been on the internet for a long time, definitely most of this century, if not part of the last one. So I think you know that I'm familiar. I mean, I remember what web pages looked like in the 90s. I remember, coding and CSS style, sheets. And yeah, I even remember making a web page of my own in 2001. So I know about the internet, as any millennial would know. But one thing that I do remember is the internet being an exciting and interesting place with lots of opportunity for knowledge consumption and to figure things out. And for a few years, the internet was amazing. However, I would genuinely say in the last 10 years that it's getting really empty and really vacuous. And what was once interesting content, especially sort of 12, 15 years ago when people were, YouTube really took off and Instagram took off and people were, making content about their hobbies and interests, it seems to have really taken a bit of a nosedive now. And it does feel a little bit empty. And I think a lot of that emptiness has to do with AI slop. A phrase that I only actually came across myself a few days ago intrigued me and kind of explained how I've been feeling. So it's not so much, what is AI slop? It's just empty. It's there and it's a diet that we are consuming whether we want to or not on the internet. And it's creating a little bit of a mess. And yeah, so what exactly is it? So let's start off with that. That's a good point. So AI slop is mass-produced, low-effort, AI-generated content that exists for one reason only: to be consumed. So we consume media. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's even a little theory about how and why we consume media. So it's the uses and gratification theory. This is something that I teach in GCSE Media Studies, and you might be familiar with it yourself, you may not. But we consume media for a few kind of simple reasons: to kind of inform us of what's going on in the world, to educate us, to learn something, to kind of self-represent ourselves or to survey others and to see what, the rest of us are like. And, there are a couple of others in there as well, but I won't go into too much detail. But the use and gratification theory is that we consume content to satisfy a particular need. And we could even overlap this with Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well. And I think the best and most rewarding content is content that satisfies us in some way, that we've learned something from it or we're entertained by that content. We get something useful from it. We're educated, we're informed, we're entertained, we understand ourselves. We learn a lot through the content. And I think for a really long time, we were quite lucky because our media was very regulated. You couldn't put something on broadcast media, be it radio or television, without it having to meet quite stringent criteria. You can't publish or print something without it kind of meeting quite stringent and criteria and being fact-checked and verified. So for a long time, we could trust in the information that we were consuming. However, that isn't so much the case. And with the AI slop that's being generated now, we can't always be sure that what we're watching is actually factual or, accredited or even safe to consume. And this is kind of part of the problem. It's not there to teach us. It's not there to inspire us. And it's not even that entertaining. Sometimes we watch it and feel very empty, and a small feeling of self-loathing, like when we've gorged on too much junk food. It might be a little treat to begin with, but a solid diet of it is not what we want. And that's what's really disappointing about AI slop. So, who's making this AI slop content? Well, they're not actually evil geniuses in hoodies. No, they're just regular people like you and I who are chasing ad revenue, because as everything I seem to cover in these videos, we can put money as the root of all evil. Content farms. So there are actual places that are producing this because, again, they're trying to revenue stream. Automation bros, and sometimes just one bloke with a laptop and a very flexible moral compass, because sometimes when money's involved, we don't need a moral compass, do we? Well, not all of us. I have one, but maybe not everyone does. So AI slop is cheap, fast, scalable, and never gets tired, and it never gets to its point either. It isn't that kind of content. It doesn't need a cup of tea. It doesn't need a break. It doesn't need to research in order to verify what it's doing. It can just go on, and it's great. And its job is not to be good. It isn't good. And its job is to trigger engagement signals from us, the audience at home, or you, the audience at home in the case of this, through clicks, watch time, scrolling, and confused curiosity. Why am I watching this? Why is this popped up? What is the purpose of this? So the algorithm doesn't ask what is meaningful. It asks, did they pause? And did they click through? And if they did, then that's great. And that's the whole purpose of it. So I've got a couple of stats just to start us off here. So 1 in 5 videos you see is actually rubbish on YouTube. 1 in 5 videos is going to be the AI slop that I've talked about. And that is 20% of the videos that you are within access of or reach of. 20%. So 20% is pure rubbish and not really worth watching or consuming. And this statistic is from The Guardian. And another study found that of 278 YouTube channels, that these only produce AI slop. And these 278 YouTube channels amass nearly 63 billion views and 221 million subs. That is a lot. And this is from the Underlulu Ayanzi. And it's also been referenced in Indian Express as well. So again, that is quite alarming, that there's this empty, vacuous content that has nothing worthwhile and nothing, mentally nutritional for us to consume. And yet it's amassing lots of views and lots of subs, and therefore monetizing itself. So who's doing this? Or content farms using free AI tools, according to the Indian Express. So there are people who sit there and their main role in life is to generate this content, which lacks any kind of scrutiny or kind of ethical content. So the broadest summary then. So the article that stimulated this idea for a video was actually in The Guardian, and I think it has been picked up in a couple of other publications, as mentioned through my statistics. So what's it doing? What are the problems with this? So it is the erosion of content quality and creativity. Now, I've been following a person on YouTube for about 2 years. And I started following their content because they were from a specific part of the world, and they were culturally exploring that country's views and takes on things, and looking at foreigners living in that country. And it was just so interesting. And I'm not going to name this channel because I'm not throwing shade. I just kind of noticed how this person, who has now amassed quite a lot of views, way more than I probably will ever have, but how their content has become really empty and has very much become about eating snacks. And whilst snacks are great, that's not the content that I'm looking for. And it's, the same videos over and over again. And therefore, whilst I'm still subscribed to them, I'm not really watching their content and I'm not engaged with it because they've lost me. They went from being kind of intelligent and thoughtful and something that I would really be interested in to something that's really kind of empty and repetitive and kind of immature. It went from being quite mature content to being very immature. And I get it. A guy's got to earn a living. You know, if this is your main job, then absolutely, you got to go where the money is, I suppose. However, yeah, it just meant that the content has become really, it seems, even though he's a content creator making it, it seems overly mass produced. And sometimes itself it's becoming surreal and nonsensical. And this is because probably he's been looking at this AI slop content and seeing how it's tracking and how it's doing so well. And it is nonsensical, mass produced, surreal, a bit ridiculous, like an oversized gerbil doing something ridiculous. I don't get it. I'm too intelligent for this. And I think some of us are intelligent and we just can't be doing with it. But there's going to be a knock-on effect because if you're a child and you're watching this stuff, what kind of messages are you receiving? So algorithm-driven incentives, obviously, over human value. It's more about clicks and algorithm than it is about human engagement. And I think about the old days when we used to watch something on television and we'd look at viewing figures that were sustained and in-depth and audience retention. These are important figures, but these videos aren't really about that, are they? They're like micro kind of media and not really giving us anything to learn from. And platforms like YouTube reward engagement, and low effort AI content can be optimized to grab attention and generate ad money, even without meaningful storytelling or meaningful expertise behind them. And that's really sad. And it's therefore shifted the platform's economy towards quantity and virality, so the ability to go viral, rather than quality. And this is from Capwing. And that's true. This is exactly what's happening to that content creator that I just talked about. His content no longer is that interesting, insightful content that probably took a lot longer to film and edit and put together. And now it's just a junk food diet special. And again, it's going to get lost along all the other AI slop, even though that isn't AI slop, his stuff, the rest of it is. And we're just dumbing down. It goes back to that video, doesn't it? So the algorithm is dictating what you watch, what I watch. The bad thing about the algorithm, though, is it can't tell you why you watched it because it's not real. It's not a person and it can't have that capability. It can't tell you why you watched it. It can't really, verify the audience really and so forth. So it's going to impact on the audience, isn't it? It's going to impact on the audience in a particular way. So what are the wider ramifications of this? So on the surface, it looks harmless, isn't it? It's like empty, faffy content. It's not shouting, it's not radical, and it's not obviously wrong. And maybe that's the actual problem. So what it does is quietly trains us to accept less. Think about that. Less depth, less accuracy, and less humanity. I mean, part of the reason you might watch my stuff is because you watch me and you want to see how I think, because it's human, it's real, that I am a person. I might anger you, I might make you laugh, I might, make you reflect, but it's a human experience, even if it's through a screen on a device. This is all real and genuine, isn't it? This isn't artificially generated. This is an idea I've had and I've decided to edit it into particular content. Great. But what if there's a whole generation of people that haven't been brought up on the diet that I've talked about? And I'm using this analogy of diets. I think it's so clever. So if AI slop is, sugary, starchy, overly sweetened, empty calorie, fast food style diet, we were lucky enough, if we're over a certain age, to have grown up watching slower forms of content and engaging with content in a lot more detail, watching quality TV programs that are edited and put together appropriately, watching documentaries that have facts and have been researched and have been verified, watching the news and knowing that we can trust that information. And we didn't have any other choices. There wasn't this sloppy fast food AI diet available to us. So we learned some skills but there's a generation below us that aren't. And obviously a couple of weeks ago I made a video about Gen Alpha and brain rot and how screens are ruining things. And I suppose this kind of intersects with that. You don't finish an AI slop video feeling informed or satisfied. There's no catharsis from it. You finish it feeling maybe empty and then scrolling for something else. And then there's that dopamine hit of watching something that captures your interest. We start consuming vibes instead of knowledge. And I suppose it's dumbing us down. Are we dumbing down? We zoom out and we're actually looking at a whole culture of people that can't concentrate, that can't focus on anything, and everything's surface and shallow and empty, and there is no depth. And we've got authorship disappearing. Expertise looks the same as guesswork because non-expert people are leading the way and telling us how things should be. You know, there's like, I'm listening, and maybe this is me getting older, but there are people now who are younger than me that do things report on things, and they don't have that knowledge of experience, but they talk about, you know, like how people are talking about, you know, Y2K or what it was like, and, you know, the romanticizing of it. And you're like, no, it really wasn't like that. Go and speak to somebody who was there and verify that instead of trying to like get your social cues for that off the internet. And you don't get a loud collapse of truth. You get a slow, polite shrug where people just accept things and they just take it as it is. As I said, these YouTube accounts, you're more likely to encounter a YouTube slop in a new account. So my children are probably a bit too young for YouTube, but eventually they'll be able to have adult YouTube, not kids YouTube, and will launch themselves onto this platform. And what will they be exposed to? Because the platform itself won't know much about what their hobbies, their interests are. There'll be no personal history. And obviously the system relies on population level averages, and safe, predictable engagement beats niche or nuanced content. So, you know, stuff that everyone likes, you know, fast food, quick diet, you know, easy clicks, that sort of stuff is going to be shoved in my children's faces there rather than, you know, selecting the things that they like. My daughter likes history. My son likes science. So will they find videos of like those, that nature, or will they be watching some kind of large rat fight with the Hulk, that AI slop content? And this means that they're going to be exposed to repetitive formats, pseudo-educational explainers. That wouldn't be me, would it? I try to be. I'm an educational expert, believe it or not. AI voices, stock visuals, and factored content without any accountability. And that's why we always try to put some facts and stats in our videos here, guys, because we want evidence to support what we're talking about. Thank you for that, Sebastian. Result, the platform trains users into shallow consumption before they've expressed any real preferences. And this is, you know, teenagehood is where we learn our preferences and we learn to think for ourselves and we start to have autonomy. So actually, we're giving them some ridiculously narrow slop to consume. And it's a cold start in optimization strategy, isn't it? Ooh, they're so sneaky. Young audiences are at threat. And this links into cognitive and cultural effects, the quiet damage. And we've kind of touched on this before. So over time, this kind of content flattens curiosity. People aren't interested or inquisitive or want to find out more. They just want to be spoken to and told stuff because they don't want to do the work themselves. Interesting enough, replaces worth thinking about. It trains people to accept, you know, a vibe over any kind of evidence. That sounds right. And look at how that's impacting politics and polarization and views, because, yeah, it's a lot of the time. Reduces tolerance for slow or complex material. Too long to read. So we don't read anymore, because why would we want to sit there and, you know, do the hard stuff when we could just have someone telling us and just believe it? Because, you know, why would we do that? And people don't stop liking good content. They just stop finding it, and they're not bothered to forage and find it because it gets harder. And then culturally, this creates a flood of content without any real authorship. Declining norms around accuracy or craft. Suddenly, we're not as bothered about whether what we're watching is accurate enough, but then we might be going and touting whatever that video has said in a different avenue. A blurred line between information, entertainment, and just empty noise that sounds like it's entertaining or informative. And this is where people start referencing the dead internet. So there is this theory of the dead internet, and that nothing is real, but because signal to noise collapses. So, I think it was Google, it says it comes up with like 1 billion searches. So you type in something, it's like it's looked through 1 billion web pages, and these are your ranked pages. You go 50 pages along, click, and it stops. It does not go on for billions of pages. And very few people are willing to do that because they'll go for the first few hits, won't they? But they won't actually, go to page 100 of the web pages to see what's brought up there, because it actually doesn't exist. And yeah, there's a lot of bots producing content. There's lots of AI producing content, and it's not real. So we're just consuming nothingness. And last time I checked, nothing comes from nothing. So back to the kids. Children and vulnerable users, there's higher stakes for them, isn't it? So for younger audiences, we've got like those safeguarding concerns that we sort of talked about in other videos. So it can mimic educational format. So this AI content can mimic more authentic content. And repetition masquerades as learning because it's just been dumbed down like one key piece of information rather than having to work their way through it and to infer maybe a bigger idea. An authority is implied but never earned. And I watched a few of these videos that have been talking about like K-pop actresses or actors, because if you remember, I'm kind of into Korean dramas. So I'm not into K-pop, but anyway, it came up on my thing, and it was an AI voice that was speaking in not English. It was English speaking, but the verbs were wrong because it was AI, and it was old data. It was just a mess. And I was thinking, God, this is a hot mess. And I could see that, but maybe someone younger wouldn't, and then they wouldn't have that capability of figuring it out. And the risks aren't dramatic or immediate. They are actually developmental. So this is going to lead us to reduce language richness, passive rather than exploratory engagement. And you've heard me talk about that in another video. And trust in content without understanding credibility. It's a quick fix, ease, quick convenience. Doesn't matter if there is no depth there, but actually we do. We need that depth. It's important. And this is especially worrying when platforms recommend rather than having active users choosing their content. I don't want my algorithm to be bringing up the same rubbish. And sometimes my own algorithms frustrate me. They bring up things I've already watched or I don't want to see again. So what's going on there? So the young people are very much at risk, that we've seen in the video. And in a clean test account, 104 of the first 500 suggested vids were slop, and 33% were mind-numbing brain rot content. So we can't escape it. It's everywhere. AI slop looks authoritative, it looks accurate, but actually it lacks fact-checking and expertise. So it's not great. But what does this mean for, like, the creators who are really making the content, who are doing the research, who are sharing aspects or passions and interests that they have? So human creators are competing with infinite output. Like, I can't make more videos than I do right now, guys, because I've got a life. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, I'm everything to everyone. It's just been Christmas. I've been, working very closely with Santa Claus. And it's, it's been one of them. And a zero marginal cost, it does take time and energy to produce this. I've got to find the time to do it. And I can be burnt out or exhausted. So I don't necessarily always feel the desire to do it. And I should always do this because it's enjoyable to me. And also, I'm considered and I'm ethical, and I'm trying to make sure that my content is fair and accurate, or the best that it can be for me, and to make sure that, you're getting a genuine experience here. But, none of the AI stuff is offering any of that. But also, they can publish more frequently, they can generate a lot more content, they're continuously working because it's artificial, and they don't need to care about the welfare of their audience because that isn't a concern of theirs. So if you want a skilled educator, journalist, or artist, or somebody with that depth, they're not going to be able to publish as frequently. They are going to need research time. These videos don't just magically happen. There has to be some planning, prep, and research. And that's important that we do that. Like even on this micro cottage level of industry that I suppose YouTube is for some of us, it can't, we still have to try and, do things properly, don't we? Whereas these AI slop videos don't need to worry about that or aren't worrying about that. And the platform doesn't intend to punish quality actually, but it incentives accidentally do. So it's incentivizing. And that's how monetization created this problem. So let's talk about AI slop. And it didn't appear because people stopped caring. It appeared because the system rewarded it with clicks and views and subs. So the monetization loop. Platforms pay for engagement, not accuracy, not originality, engagement. So more uploads equals more chances to earn. Cheaper content equals higher profit. Automation beats craftsmanship every time because it's like mass-produced content, isn't it? Let's go make a factory analogy here. It's mass-produced. It's not going to be like the original stuff. And if you can make 500 videos a day instead of one carefully researched one, which will the algorithm prefer? Which will the algorithm be more familiar with? The mass-produced one. And this isn't creators being lazy, it's creators responding perfectly to the incentives that they've been given. So AI slop is not a glitch, it's actually a business model working exactly as it's designed to do. The product of our own demise. And what started off as a brilliant thing 15 years ago of making content and sharing hobbies and interests and being social media and connecting people has now just been reduced to let's make stuff to earn money because everything's about money, isn't it? And here's the uncomfortable part. Platforms will often say users choose what to watch, but recommendation systems are active curators, aren't they? Not neutral pipes. So they really are going to be chasing a certain thing on that algorithm. And the unresolved questions are, should AI-generated content be labeled by default? Should we actually know what we're consuming here? And I know there are like things where it says AI-enabled or whatever, but I don't think anyone's really paying attention to it. Should it be monetized at the same rate? Maybe it shouldn't. Should repetition be penalized, not rewarded? So actually, this is the same stuff, different day. Actually, no, we don't want this. We want better, and our audience expects better. And who decides what counts as low quality? I mean, is this low quality to somebody? I don't know. So right now, regulation lags far behind capability. And can we really, govern the internet? Can we govern these platforms? I don't even think the platforms can do that themselves, hence why there are so many problems with it. So what's the big picture? What does it actually represent then? So this isn't just a YouTube issue, it's a sign of a wider shift. From creation to generation, from expression to optimization, from meaning to metric. The danger isn't that AI content exists. No one's saying that there's a problem with it per se. It's the danger is that the systems built for profit can't distinguish meaning from mimicry. And that's the problem, isn't it? And everything becomes surface, shallow, and empty. And if we're eating a diet of surface, shallow, and empty, it's going to stop us from being able to critically think. And that's concerning. So how do we fix this, team? Well, this isn't inevitable. We are able to fight this and challenge this if we choose to do so. So what are the platform level solutions that we could go to here? So platforms could do things like reduce monetization for mass AI content because suddenly it won't be so lucrative and therefore there's no point in doing it because it isn't getting me the money it is. Penalize repetition, so rather than the same content over and over again. Prioritize human-made content for new users. So maybe there needs to be a little stamp on it that this is human being, this is a real person, this is a personality, this content is kind of, authentic. Label AI generated material clearly. This is AI, maybe even give it a little slop logo so we know that we're getting something that isn't kind of, valid. They don't do it though because it might dent profits, but trust once lost is much more expensive. As I've said, I don't want to watch content like this. I will go and find different places to get the content that I want because that's who I am. And at the end of the day, if enough of us think like this, then we can start to dent people where it hurts in the profit margins. So create an audience solution. So this is the bit we do control, okay? So on a human level, we can do something quietly radical, can't we? We can follow people and not feeds, if it feels like there isn't a personality behind it, if it feels like there isn't a sense of somebody, just unsubscribe or unfollow and don't give it the time and attention that you've been giving it. Because, you know, the most interesting accounts that I follow are ones with the human beings in front of them. Value slow content. There are some really great YouTubers that I follow that I can wait a couple of weeks for content, but I know that they're working on that content and they'll upload something when they have something to say, and I enjoy their content. Reward originality with intention. Well, reward originality with attention, not attention. Like, yeah, watch these things, help the algorithm to realize that the AI slop isn't winning and that you are going to rewatch these people's videos because you think they have something worthwhile to say. And if you're not sure, always ask, who made this and why am I consuming this? Is it informing me? Is it educating me? Is it, you know, do I see myself represented here? Like, what is it about this? It is kind of resonating with me. And attention is currency, so you need to spend it wisely and spend it where it matters. So, slop isn't the end of creativity. We're human beings, we're creative, we're clever, we're capable, and we need to remember that. And I do think that a lot of what I'm saying is kind of ironic, seeing as I'm sitting here on a screen creating content for you to consume. But I think there's a lot of really amazing people out there that make some really interesting and thoughtful content. And YouTube is a platform that I always come back to for that reason. And I equally think that it can be used as a tool for education. It can be a tool of mass communication in positive ways. And I think there's some brilliant stuff on here, but I don't want the AI slop. And I really think that we need to start being a little bit more discerning, and maybe there needs to be better regulation or an authority that does the regulation for us. So the question is whether we still know how to choose meaning over noise. And I think this is something we need to think about: our tastes, our preferences, our interests. We as human beings are multifaceted and nuanced, and our content should reflect that. And the next generation, we should teach them these skills, especially when they haven't grown up in the environment where they had the ability to become more discerning with their content, because it was so well regulated and the internet wasn't a big free-for-all that everybody could go on. So these are things that we also need to think about. So I suppose this has been your mildly unsettling internet thought for the day. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you think this article is a little kind of intense and far-fetched? Are you fed up of AI slop? Is this something that you've noticed as well? Obviously, I love hearing from you. I love hearing your thoughts and your comments and your ideas. So feel free to comment below, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Ta-ta for now. Bye.